I've been using the new iPhone 14 Pro Max since it was first released back in September of 2022, and in this video, I'll be talking about all the new features and my experience with this phone. At a quick glance, you won't be able to tell the difference between the new iPhones and the older 13 Pros. That is, unless you're keeping track of the new colors, which are deep purple on the left and space black on the right. Replacing the old notch is the new pill-shaped notch Apple likes to call Dynamic Island. Think of this like an interactive notch. So basically it turns into different shapes and sizes using Apple's unique animations and transitions to notify you with system alerts while giving you quick widget-like access to apps running in the background. This feature is integrated to work throughout iOS 16 to show you alerts like charging status, confirming whether your AirPods are connected, muting and unmuting the phone, answering phone calls, screen recording, the timer, music playback menu, even the maps. The notch tells me when to turn. It's probably one of my favorite features about the new Dynamic Island. And there are a bunch of more features that's yet to come thanks to third-party apps also being able to take advantage of the Dynamic Island. Here's a feature both the iPhone 14s and the 14 Pros get, and it's called crash detection. Whenever your iPhone detects a severe car crash, it will automatically initiate an emergency phone call to emergency services. That is, unless you hit cancel within 20 seconds. This is the first time Apple's using different chips for their phones. The iPhone 14s get the A15 Bionic chip, same as the one on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, while the iPhone 14 Pros get the new A16 Bionic chip. The A16 Bionic chip is the first chip built on the new 4nm process, bringing speed and efficiency improvements. The A16 has a faster 6-core CPU, an accelerated 5-core GPU with 50% more memory bandwidth, and an updated 16-core neural engine that performs 17 trillion operations per second. For comparison, I'm coming from an iPhone 13 Pro Max with an A15 Bionic chip. On a day-to-day use, I didn't really notice that big of a performance difference. It's just a slight improvement. It's more like all the power hungry features the iPhone 14 Pro Max has, it needs the A16 Bionic chip to power all those features, while the iPhone 14s with the A15 Bionic chip, same as the one on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, has more than enough power to run those devices. Probably the biggest and the most exciting upgrade has to be the cameras for me. The main camera on the back has went up from the 12 megapixel sensor on the iPhone 13 Pro Max to a 65% larger 48 megapixel sensor on the new iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max. With a 65% larger sensor, there's also a new 2x optical quality zoom option available as well. The photo and video quality difference between the 13 Pro's camera and the 14 Pro's is not that huge until you start comparing low-light photos. That's mainly where you'll see the new camera setup outshine the cameras on the older iPhone 13 Pros. Cinematic mode also got an upgrade. Now you can shoot 4K videos at 30 frames per second. And then there's also a new action mode where the iPhone crops in your footage and stabilizes it to make it look more stable. The front camera also got an upgrade. It's still 12 megapixels, but now has a larger f1.9 aperture with autofocus and a 30% smaller Face ID hardware. Overall, photo and video quality has stepped up a notch, but for casual users or people coming from an iPhone 12 or 13 Pro Max, you won't really be seeing that big of an upgrade unless you compare them side by side in low light photography. As for the display, it's similar to the one on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but slightly brighter with an LTPO panel. This phone has a peak brightness of 1600 nits when viewing HDR content and 2000 nits of peak brightness when viewed outdoors. That's almost 2 times brighter than the iPhone 13 Pro Max's screen that had a peak brightness of 1200 nits. There's also new ambient light sensors on the back to help out with the auto brightness as well as the always on display. That's another new feature on the iPhone, is the always on display. It makes it easier to stay in the know without having to tap on the phone screen. So basically, it's going to have the phone screen turned down to the lowest brightness and it's going to stay on and notify you, while the LTPO display brings the refresh rate down to 1 Hz to save battery life. Overall, the iPhone 14 Pro Max has an excellent display, top notch, one of the best. Everything seems to be going digital nowadays, so why not the SIM card, right? So yeah, that's exactly what's new, or should I say gone, is the SIM card slot. Unless you decide to get an international model, then you can still enjoy the physical SIM card slot. I heard people were having trouble switching over to the eSIM from the physical SIM, but in my experience, it was a smooth and easy process. Instead of activating the phone at the store, I brought it home with me and activated it myself. I was easily able to transfer my physical SIM card's information from my iPhone 13 Pro Max to my iPhone 14 Pro Max without any issues. Here's a new feature hopefully nobody has to use, and it's called Emergency SOS. Now the new iPhone 14s and the 14 Pros allow you to communicate with emergency services via a satellite. This feature will only work under exceptional circumstances. Only if there's no other way of reaching emergency services is when this feature will work, and the iPhone will even help you find the satellite. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has a 4323 mAh battery, so basically the same size battery as on the 13 Pro Max, but 29 milliamps smaller. And in real world use, I was pretty much getting the same amount of battery life as I did with the 13 Pro Max, plus or minus an hour or so, depending on if I have the always on display on or not. So excellent battery life. I'm still able to get a full day of use with the always on display on, so I just have that on most of the time. Unless I get annoyed, then I turn it off by switching over to low power mode. To wrap it all up, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the best iPhone yet, but it's not the only good iPhone. So if you're thinking about upgrading from an iPhone 13 Pro Max or any iPhone, just make sure all the new features are worth the upgrade for you.